kia ora from Auckland, New Zealand. Konnichiwa, good day, bonjour, from whatever part of the world you are in. Welcome to celebrating a worldwide alliance of women coaches. And thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out from your busy schedules. We had 100 people registered for this event with an overflow on the YouTube channel where it's being live streamed. So it's a fantastic turnout, and I'm looking forward to what I know will be an amazing session. So I'm Pauline Harrison. I guess I'd call myself a campaigner, an activist, an advocate of women's sport. And I run international leadership programs for women in sport. And I'm chair of the IWG World Conference on Women and Sport. And I also led the ICCE Women in Coaching project for the last 10 years. Now, joining me here today are two amazing women who are here to share their insights and experience, Cecile Renard and Michelle de Hayden. So in a week when the world has lost arguably one of the greatest female leaders of our time, Queen Elizabeth, it is important to celebrate the great work that women coaches are doing around the world. In the past, we've described women's sport as understudied, underrepresented, underfunded, undervalued, but things are changing for the good. We're entering a new era for gender equity. But here's the question: is women's coaching keeping up? And the ICCE Women in Coaching program ensures that it does. Now, the purpose of today is twofold. First of all, to introduce a really exciting new book to offer us inspiration for the work that we do. And secondly, to build a network of people committed to the advancement of women and coaching globally. More about that later. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So general rules for webinars, which we're all very familiar. Please keep your microphone and your camera off. Use the chat function, which is at the bottom of the screen, for any questions. Pop them up there, and also just put who you are and where you're from so you can introduce yourselves to each other. And if you miss anything, this session is being recorded and it will be available and sent to you after the event. And of course, as always, please share anything you want to on social media. #ICCE Connect, #Winning Women. Okay, so it's now my privilege and my pleasure to introduce the first of our speakers today. Cecile Renard is the editor of a fabulous new book from Human Kinetics, Winning Ways of Women Coaches. And I know you will recognize the importance of a book on this topic. It's so needed. So thank you, Cecile, for all the work you've done on this. Cecile will share her insights and experiences and the stories of some great female coaches and identify the lessons learned from her discussions with them. But first off, it's my job to share some highlights of Cecile and her extremely extinguished, I hope not, distinguished career in coaching in the United States. She was the head coach of the Florida State University volleyball team for 26 years, where she was seriously successful. And she's been inducted into numerous halls of fame for her coaching, her writing, her commentating, and her academic career. Now, I'm not going to take any more of your time giving Cecile's life story. Suffice to say, it is truly fabulous. So I'm going to pass over without any further ado to you, Cecile. Welcome.
Thank you, Pauline. I appreciate that. And I particularly appreciate getting to address an audience that's interested in the same topic and passion that I have. We can go to that next slide, please. And let me just give you a little context of how I got the concept for this book. As Pauline said, I coached volleyball for 26 years, so I read everything I could on coaching. And I had but they were all by men coaches. And then I had the opportunity to publish a couple of volleyball books. And I said to the publishers, it'd be great to have some books about women coaching and women in coaching. So they let me put something together. In 2005, I put together She Can Coach. I think it's still available as an ebook, but it was 20 different coaches, 13 different sports, 20 different topics. And it went over very well. But now in 2020, I came to them. I said, I think it might be time to do this again. So we came up with another book of 20 coaches, I think 15 different sports and of 20 different topics. And this time they're from all around the world. We added coaches from Canada and Australia. So this is the way I got these topics together were just topics that I thought were critical for coaches to know. And any of you that have ever done a school project, trying to get 20 people in a group to work together, this was really interesting. The criteria for these contributing coaches, they had to have won a world championship, an Olympic championship, a national championship. So we were dealing with extremely busy women, but they all donated their time. We all donated our time and energy to put this 2-year project together. And all the proceeds for this are going to go to We Coach, which is our organization in the United States. We work to recruit, retain, and educate women coaches at all levels. So let me take you through a few chapters tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you are. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida. So one chapter was it's called Defining and Adjusting Athletes' Roles, which I think is a topic that most of us could use some work on. It's a problem area you can get into with your teams. This is by Kelly Enway Perez. She's the very successful softball coach at UCLA. And I learned so much from her in this writing with her chapter. She thinks it's always important to have a team mission to guide your coaching decisions. And theirs was mission first and team always. And so I think she used that as she approached all of her athletes. This is going to help you make decisions as a coach. And once people understand their role, then you can work on the team being successful. And their roles may change every day or every match. I mean, softball plays a lot. And the second one is to use metrics to develop a dashboard for individual players to measure their progress. Every sport has different metrics. It might be speed, it might be jumping ability, it might be how fast they run from first to second base. I mean, whatever the metric is for your sport. Make sure that you track that for your athletes and share that with them and let them use that as a guide for what they need to improve on, where they are and where they might need to be if they want to see that role change. She thinks that really helps them become a better version of themselves every single day. And I would agree, metrics are wonderful. It's not a subjective decision, but you're giving them objective things to think about. And then be clear in your individual meetings on expectations and the athlete's role on the team. If we talked about being clear once, she said it every other sentence. So she really believes in being clear. And that's so important because we know how athletes might misconstrue what you say. And their roles are going to change. So daily communication is important, daily meetings. And she will have them come into her meetings, bring a notebook with them, have an agenda. They would go through that agenda and really go through everything. And then they would leave with those notes. And then she would make sure they understood their role and she would share that with the entire team afterwards. But she never went in front of the team and announced who was starting. She always made sure everybody knew that ahead of time. And then value each athlete that's in your program and listen to each one of them carefully and have them come to the meeting with notes, as we talked about. I think she said that when she first started coaching, and as you've had many meetings with athletes, you tell them something and they say, yeah, but, what if, why can't? And she said she started to go down that wormhole with them. And then she went, but wait a minute, I can't do that. So she would say to them, this is the most difficult part of my job. This is what I've evaluated you on. This is what we need for you to do for our team to be successful. And she felt that that really worked with her team, not to get into back and forth discussion, but to make sure that they understood that that was her role and that's how they would be successful. And then determine the best leadership method to be used within your team. She had a team leadership council, but I thought the way she approached it was very interesting. Her seniors didn't do the heavy lifting. They were there just to play and enjoy the process. But what she did is she set them up. She had the juniors were the leaders, seniors were influencers, juniors were leaders, sophomores were followers, and the freshmen were learners. What an interesting concept to just the way she parceled that all out. And then she really wanted people to be empowered. So she empowered her athletes to be the best version of themselves every day. And again, that changes over and over. So set them up for success by giving them metrics, meeting with them, and being clear. So really one of my favorite chapters. Kelly is just brilliant. And I think you'll learn a lot on how she works with her team in that manner. And then the next chapter I went with to talk to you about is, if we can change the slide, is, and I think this is a really important concept, keep it fun while instilling the values. And this is by Lonnie Alameda, who is the softball coach at Florida State University. So I get to see her all the time, watch her teams play, learn from her as much as I can. And I think she's one of the best I've ever been around in the world. She does it all. She knows tactics, techniques, strategy with her team, community service, public relations. I mean, she is gifted. So I asked her to participate in this book because she's so much known for her coaching style. So she believes know your own core values and your non-negotiables, what you're willing to tolerate and not, and then work with the team to bring those into the program. And she talks about how this isn't just something you put on a poster, but that you live it every single day. And that the way they do this, they practice them by speaking them. So they speak to each other in terms of values and how they approach each day. They show them, they quiz each other, and then they will identify them all in all situations. So they're constantly going over these core values. And I think that that's really important. Be your authentic self as a coach. Every coach addressed this area. And as we all know, you cannot admire a coach and try and be like them. You're going to have to be yourself, as long as it's the right way to coach. It might take years to figure out what you're comfortable with, but Lonnie found out that people didn't think her coaching philosophy would work. And so she kept at it and she kept at it. And then she won a national championship and she really validated in her mind, her coaching style, and that she could do that. So I think it's important that you be true to yourself. And that's the best way you're going to continue in the long run to be a successful coach. And then establishing the line with your team early on expected behaviors. So identifying above the line and below the line behaviors. It could be such things as an above the line behaviors, having your shirt tucked in, being on time to meetings. And so when athletes maybe were not doing those things, they could remind each other, hey, we need above the line behavior here. And everybody understood it wasn't some rules and they were going to be punished, but they just all reminded each other of those behaviors. And then work hard to have fun in practices and games. And I think that's a concept that so many of us forget about. I think it's very important that everybody enjoys that daily process and that it needs to be fun, no matter if you're an Olympic level athlete or a coach, or you're in grade school. If it's not fun, they're not going to keep coming and you're not going to keep coaching. So make sure we work hard to keep fun in practices and games. Athletes perform better when they're relaxed and having fun. Teach them when to focus and when to laugh. So Lonnie's teams are on national TV quite a bit. And people that are not necessarily softball fans will tune in to watch the College World Series or conference championships. And they always comment, how do they have so much fun while they're successful? And why can't our men's teams do that same thing? So it's a real compliment to her. But she talks about, you go to practice, you might be there 2 or 3 hours, and you cannot just be grinding it the whole time. So they take time to put fun in, I think if you're in a competitive situation and your team seems uptight, if you do something fun, they seem to laugh and chuckle, take a deep breath, and they come back out much stronger. So please make sure that you try and keep that fun in your practice. All right, let's go to the next slide. And this is a chapter on coaching and raising a family, really important. This is by Ellen Randall. She's a rowing coach from Australia, and she raised 2 daughters. And it's really important. We see a lot of women that say, I'm not sure if I can coach and raise the family at the same time. And certainly we have a lot of people that are doing it very successfully. So motherhood and coaching are challenging, but with the right situation at home and at work, it can be done with great success. And I think Ellen felt like most people probably meet their spouse or partner before they're coaching, or it could be after they're coaching, but they've got to know what you're interested in doing and what the challenges are going to be with coaching. So make sure you set yourself up for success with that. And it's going to be important if you want to coach at a high level that they understand the commitment and travel away from home. Keep your work and family separated if at all possible in both areas, and wherever you are, be all there. If you're at your practice or competition, be there and make sure your thought is and your intention is on that. And if you're at home, make sure that you leave work aside until kids or somebody goes to bed, and then you can dig back into it. But I think it's really important that you keep them separated. Ellen's sport was a little bit different. And many coaches bring their kids to practice or games, and obviously she was out on the water, and that wasn't really appropriate for the young kids. But if you could do that, it's great, and every team loves to have those children around to play. The partner and organization support are essential for you to be a good mother and a successful coach and being happy in both areas. We have found that coaches in the United States that are working at universities that have good support from their organizations can be highly successful. They can get child support. They understand that the coaches may come into work a little bit later and that they've got to work around some of that family time. So make sure that you've got family, parents, siblings that can help you take care of your family as much as possible. And then also just the shout out for single coaches. Let's not forget, they also need a support group. Single coaches have dogs, they have to pay bills, they have to go grocery shopping, they have to have houses cleaned. So make sure that if you're a single coach, you understand that and you get yourself a network of support as well. All right, and let's look at this last slide, which is really just general coaching advice, or it could be, we could call it my 2 cents or my winning ways to coaching, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of advice from my years of experience. I think it's really important that you enjoy the daily process, and success will take care of itself. Most of the coaches in this book didn't mention winning, but I think if you look back at a long career and you just enjoy every single day, it's going to be one of the most fantastic careers you can be in. So think about the process. We ask our athletes to support the process. You need to do that as well. It's not just that last game or that last championship that determines everything. You've got to enjoy it throughout the year. Talk less and ask more questions of your athletes. You know, we like to just talk, and they kind of tune us out after a while. Make them come up with the answers instead of always giving the answer to them. You know, you're telling them what to do, and we need to just ask them, what do you think you should be doing? How did that feel? How could you be more successful? So I think it's really important, just ask more questions than telling. And then when teaching, show them and tell them how to do something correctly instead of showing them, telling what they might do incorrectly. This has to be one of my pet peeves. You know, when an athlete says, what am I doing wrong? And the coach that says, well, you shanked it, or, your elbow was up too high. And so then you even show them what they're doing wrong. Just say, I don't want to tell you what you're doing wrong. Let me tell you what you need to do right, and demonstrate what they need to do right, and just give them the key words for what they need to do right. And then you've got to be good with people. That's what you're coaching. You're not coaching volleyball. You're not coaching basketball. You're coaching people. So any outside reading you might do, it could be on relationships with people, and then spend time getting to know each athlete and what they need from you to be the best version of themselves. Really important. If I were to go back and coach again, it's more about the people. Some coaches say, I don't have time for meetings. You do have time for meetings. That's your biggest asset, are those athletes. So take time and spend time with them. And then live life where your feet are. If you're on a plane, if you're on the field, if you're in the gym, with family, be where you are. If I'm on a plane, I'm having the best time on the plane. I'm reading, I'm watching a movie, I'm talking to somebody. That's where my life is. And so I enjoy that. And then lastly, I just want to thank you all for being a coach. I think it's so important. It's one of the greatest careers you can ever have. And you're so important in your athletes' lives and their success. Please feel free to reach out with me if you've got any questions. And I think my email was on that first slide. And I'd be happy to talk with you. And then thanks for listening this evening. Pauline?
Wow. Thank you very much, Cecile. That was awesome. And your timekeeping is impeccable.
How is that for being a coach, right?
Absolutely spot on.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, there's so many interesting chapters and aspects of coaching in your book to choose from. You've done a great job pulling out some real key factors. If we could see the audience, I'm sure there'd be a standing ovation. Now, there are one or two questions coming through, but please, those of you in the audience, pop some in the chat and then we can have a discussion with Cecile. But before we move on to them, Cecile, you've obviously shared some general coaching advice that you pulled out from those magnificent women that you interviewed. But if you had to say what was your most important winning way as a coach, what would it be? Because you've been so successful.
I really feel it's about people. That if you can't connect with people, I mean, we've got brilliant coaches that can talk X's and O's and everything else, but they can't relate to their athletes or their athletes' parents or families. I mean, you're really not going to get anywhere. You've got to understand people. And I think that was one of my strengths, is to try and relate to people. And you never want to be their last coach. You want them to continue on to the next level. And then just, friendships throughout life. To me, that was what success was all about, is having people enjoy it every day, relating to people and enjoying the process.
Mm. And that's really come out in everything you've been talking, that success isn't just about winning. It is about that impact you make on the athletes and others around you. Let's have a look at some of the questions that we've got in here. What have we got? So this is from John, actually. You talked about Kelly's emphasis on metrics. Does Kelly use any metrics other than physical or technical ones, for example, related to attitudes and relationships?
She did. And of course, I tried to get her to give me her metrics, but she said, no, each coach has to come up with their own, which every coach would say that. But yes, she evaluates them. The coaches evaluate them on a variety of things. It could be mental strength, positive attitude. And some of those she just shares with the individual athletes. And they discuss that back and forth, so that there is some discussion on attitude or willingness to accept their role, or the way they get along with their teammates. So yes, they evaluate those and share those with the athletes, because that's certainly some things that can keep you off the field, not just whether you're need to be faster or hit better.
Thank you. And we got another question in here. Keep them coming, everyone. So the question is, again, it's about Kelly. So do you know how Kelly developed her leadership strategy with her seniors, her juniors over time? Was this trial and error, or did she have a particular process for that?
Well, I think everything is probably trial and error, but she talked specifically about two athletes that had gone off to be Olympians, and she really wanted to come back for their senior year. And she said, I promise you won't have to do anything, just show up and play, and we'll run the rest of the team. And so I think it kind of came from that she understood how much seniors, once you get to be a senior or you've been somewhere 4 years, how hard you've worked and the commitment you've put in, that, and there's enough pressure for seniors. She wanted to take a little bit the pressure off of them and just let them play and enjoy that last year. So I think she came up with that over time, but it sounded to me like it was really excellent. And the juniors really took on the arranging team meetings and deciding things, on the itinerary and everything else. And then, the freshmen are just, freshmen, and they're just trying to figure it all out. So I think, again, Kelly's a brilliant coach, and she's researched a lot of things. She reads a lot, and she talks with her assistants, who some have played for her or with her. And so they figured out this was the best way to lead their team.
Okay. Thank you, Cecile. That's some great insights there. And we'll come back at the end of this webinar to share how you can, as the audience, purchase a discounted book of Winning Ways of Women Coaches. So thank you, Cecile, for your time.
Thank you, Polly.
Now, our next speaker is another amazing human being. I haven't known Michelle de Hayden for very long, but I find her enthusiasm, a commitment, and her ability to ask questions really, truly impressive. Michelle is the High Performance Coach Development Senior Lead at the Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS. She herself is a high performance coach and has coached on the world stage. And she's also had extensive experience working as a coach developer. So this really helps her to understand both the athlete and the coach development pathway, right through from grassroots to international success. Now, Michelle's topic is really close to my heart, and she'll share some of the work she's leading at the AIS on how we can better support the journey and the environment for female high-performance coaches, and also talk a little bit about the importance of network in this process. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and very tough to follow Cecile's storytelling that she's managed to capture through her book. It is a brilliant book, and there's so many elements to each of the chapters. It's almost like you have to go back and read each chapter a couple of times. And today I'm delighted to bring along with me a brilliant young woman, Hannah Every Hall. Hannah and I haven't known each other very long, but we connected over Zoom through lockdown in Melbourne, which we were locked down for a very long period of time. And Hannah's actually a 2012 Olympian in rowing. She's a former athlete of Ellen. So we've just heard about Ellen's story from Cecile. She's represented Australia recently at the under 23 and under 19 World Championships as a coach. And she's also the performance and pathways lead for modern pentathlon. So you package all of that information up and put that together with having a family and two brilliant children. I've actually decided I need to talk less and connect with people, like Cecile said. And so I've brought Hannah along to share a couple of insights about her story and her journey, because the project, as Pauline mentioned, that I'm leading with a group of people within my team is really about storytelling. So Hannah, thank you for coming along today. And I've got a couple of questions for you just to kick this off.
Okay, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You've known Ellen for quite some time, and I know you spent some time with her on the phone last week because she's at World Championships at the moment. And you've heard about Cecile's expertise that she shared in the book. Yeah. So what I'd like to know from you, what's been the key for you that's enabled you to manage motherhood and being a high performance athlete, and now as a coach and a manager? How do you do that successfully? What's the important part for you?
The one, and you heard it from Cecile earlier, and as you alluded to, I did have an amazing chat with Ellen in preparation for today. It's definitely having that support network, and both of us have spouses that have been with us forever and sort of have seen our journey into and passion for sport. And so having them in a safe place to fall there. For Ellen, it was also another champion coach. So her co-coach in a club system, he was her biggest champion, and he has been fabulous. So Ellen sort of says times where, particularly when she had newborn children, and she said she had no sleep and was barely functioning, she would call up and say, I just can't come in this morning. And clearly for a rowing coach, when you're doing that, you're calling someone at 5 a.m, which is quite difficult. But she said because she had that support of her champion Tim, that she could do that. But also her spouse and my spouse in that journey has been instrumental in keeping us together.
All right.
So
My next question.
She actually had an asterisk, was choose your partner wisely.
That's not the first time I've heard that, actually. So one of the things Cecile mentioned before was to keep your work and your family time separate, because it helps you be where you are. All right. So when you've got multiple priorities, and I know right now you're preparing to head overseas with Modern Pentathlon next Monday, and there are some challenges looming, you're managing the work and the home stuff. How do you manage the multiple priorities?
Yeah, so I think buckets, and Cecile mentioned it before, and Ellen mentioned it, is, you know, the old saying, put it on the back burner, trying to put all your competing commitments in a bucket, and investing your time in those buckets when you have that time, and clearly prioritizing and keeping a list of things that are the most pressing for now. And you know, we teach our athletes control the controllable, and sometimes I think as coaches and leaders in the space as well, we need to take some of our own learnings and control what we can control, because there's often things outside our control that we want to work on, but no matter how much we stress about it, we can't change it. So taking some of our own advice and having those buckets. For me as an athlete, I actually loved having my family around, not while I was preparing or racing. So, you know, my husband used to always be there, but they'd be in the grandstand playing, kicking the ball, doing whatever with the kids, and I would be off competing. But I know when I did speak to Ellen at a rowing event, she would prefer that her family, if they came, that they almost didn't see her until she was completed. Like, she did like to keep it very, very separate. But having buckets and controlling what you can control.
What brilliant advice. Thank you. So Hannah's actually been involved in this project that I'm leading, which is Women in High Performance Coaching. And the key part of the project, Karen, can I get you to flick to the next slide for me? Yep, beautiful. So this project, what we're aiming to do is to understand the high performance landscape, or the ecosystem, for the women coaches in Australia, because we know everyone operates within a context. And so what we're doing is using the narrative approach, and we're really trying to understand the incentives, the motivations, and the challenges or barriers for women in high performance coaching in Australia. And the idea is to use the insights that we've captured, the storytelling, both from the women and those working with the women, the young coaches, the athletes, the women coaches who've left, to help inform us to nudge the system or shift the dial. So we know that this is a significant challenge. So the aim is to test, prod and probe to see what we can do. So we've undertaken so far 15 workshops, over 260 people that we've engaged with, and we've just finished a phase of the project where we've captured these insights, and we're looking to explore the next steps. So what I'd like to do is to just share quickly with you two key insights that we've uncovered. The first one is looking at the journey. So we know there's bits, women leave coaching for various reasons, and let's term this inflection points. When we start, when we leave, when we might re-engage. There's key inflection points, and what we're keen to try and do is understand what's the fuel, how can we support and enable those to support women and their experiences, and what's the friction, how can we reduce the friction so that their experiences are better than what they are. So we're looking at this space. We know that the career progression of women is different than it is for men. We know that this space, being a high performance coach, as Hannah's just articulated, it's hard for everybody, but it's harder for women. So how can we strategically pinpoint resources with a re-engagement strategy, or what can we do along the way? And the challenge for us is looking and understanding this better, because we've uncovered there's key reasons why women leave coaching. It might be it's simply too hard. They've been treated really badly. Their experiences are poor. They've had a family and there's no support structures for them for whatever reason, or they've simply chosen a different career path. So their reasons for leaving or going on a detour are different. So the strategies we need to enact need to be different to re-engage them. So this is one key area that we're looking to uncover in the next phase of where we're at. So we'll look at doing some test elements within that to explore it. And the second area, which I guess is some conversations I've been having with Pauline and JB about how do we build an alliance or a network. So, and Hannah's referred to this already. So one of the key insights is we have a foundation network of women coaches who are part of this project. We started with talking to 48 women over a series of 3 workshops, and we've built that over to about 65 women now. So this foundation network is a key element that we'd like to be able to continue to explore and bring with us on the journey. And I guess one of a key piece of work within my project, within the AIS coach development team, is we've launched a national Gen 2032 program. And this Gen 2032 program has 31 scholarship coaches around the country. Of those 31, 20 are women. And actually, of the 25 are part-time. So for us, how do we build a network that can support this group of women through mentorship, allyship, and sponsorship? And I guess the questions are, if I look at those 2 different groups of women, how can we support them? One is a group of women who are on a bit of a journey of their own, because they're starting at the Gen 2032 program is looking at building capacity over a period of time for coaches to impact in Brisbane in 2032. And the other is a group of women who are a varying range of experiences in their journey and a part of our project. So how can we support them? So when we look at trying to understand how to create a network, I guess there's 4 themes, I think, or elements that are potentially important. So Karen, can I get you to please flick to the next slide? So if I look at this, understanding there's a connection or a common purpose, all right? And Vanessa, I see that you're online, and I know that you're well connected with Cecile, and that connection's very strong. And I'm extremely privileged that I was able to attend the We Coach conference earlier this year. And something that was really visible to me is this really deep connection between the colleagues who run the program and the women who come to attend it. So I think if we're looking at creating a network, and I'm trying to support these 2 groups of women in our program, there's got to be a common purpose that connects them. And we need to, as facilitators, build and enhance that connection. And I think the thing that I was able to witness was the magnitude of that connection was significant. And when I've come home and tried to articulate to colleagues, I struggle sometimes to articulate that strength. It's almost like a spider web that connects people. So I think if we're looking at creating a network, we know there needs a common purpose. We need to build a foundation connection. The magnitude of that needs to be strong, but it needs to benefit everybody who's part of that. And I guess the key element that sits within that is, what is the impact? What's the impact of that connection on the women? Because if there's no impact, they're not going to continue. They won't engage. They might be fringe dwellers and observe, but they're not deeply engaged. So I'm going to circle back around to Hannah, and Hannah being involved in one of those networks. She's been a participant in the project right from the beginning. And unfortunately, actually, Hannah was at a rowing, I think you were at Rowing Nationals when we were meant to do the first workshop. And so she ended up doing the virtual workshop, which was nothing like the face-to-face one-dayer. But Hannah, what have your observations been being part of this network? And I guess I'm keen to ask you, do you feel that there's been a connection? And what do you think that has that impacted on you and others within the group?
Yeah, you say it wasn't as good, but there was still now connections from that group of women that I message and talk to through the WhatsApp group that you set up. So Ellen and I reflected on this for quite some time, because we have been quite close colleagues for ages. And then I sort of brought up the feeling of coming together with all these other women. And Ellen and I would share stories, and you know, I like it where stubborn optimists will always find a way. We'll always be quite positive and change things. So we'll always find, but you can very easily, when you're that minority group, and it could be any minority group, but we're just talking about women for the purpose of this, but it's very easy to feel like you fight all the time, and then you can feel like a victim. But just hearing the similar stories from others and sharing, one, you don't feel like you're crazy and that you're the one fighting all the time. So it brings you together by just purely by hearing similar stories. And it can change your perspective that you're not a victim. And therefore, you can sort of look at how you can control the rhetoric and how you can control the dialogue that comes out of it. And then you work out, I suppose, what you have control over, and then what you do have control over is how you react. So I think for myself particularly, just having this cohort of people together, and I think now the group is growing in traction, but people are happy to share their accomplishments and their achievements, and it's just, it feels incredibly powerful. A whole group of people trying, that half of us don't know. I wouldn't know even half the people on the group, but everyone is trying to, or not trying to, is actually bringing people up and along on the journey, as well as asking questions, and there's lots of support there. So I think it has a multitude of effects, and that's through sheer having the workshops and now creating that WhatsApp group. So you know, I've brainstormed with you different ways that it can go, and whether we fraction it off into regions that they are, whether that's in Australia or overseas, and we have in-face ones. But yeah, I think it's been a simple token of bringing people together via a WhatsApp group has been incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And probably over the weekend, Hannah, I noticed even within the comments, there were some coaches who hadn't engaged much, who were posting articles about women coaching men and men's teams. And then that created this conversation that continued from there. Yeah. So for me, facilitating this, I guess I'm trying to step back, but also understand my role. And I guess, Pauline, that's a key part of where we're at the moment, is to uncover, how can we build an alliance, a network, a connection? Can we connect different networks together? So that's essentially where we're at.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Michelle and Hannah. A wonderful presentation, and we can all learn a lot from your great slides, I have to say. The images are very powerful, and it's lovely to see that balance of words and pictures on slides. We see too many words. So I loved your connection and your conversation. So thank you for sharing those stories. You're right about the networks. We're all trying to build this, what we call social capital, is such an important element in career advancement. Why do you think we lag behind men in this regard, Michelle, in a nutshell?
I don't have any magic answers. Okay, I've got some thoughts and ideas, but I think potentially two key things that come to mind is the role models. We need more women leaders and more role models for women coaches, and as part of that is an opportunity to connect. So I think observing and listening to Hannah and working with the women coaches, I don't think it takes a lot of effort. I think the opportunity for connection, women can generally create the connection themselves, but we need to create that opportunity for them to do that, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We need to do much more of this. I have one question on the chat for you, Michelle. On the pathway for some women, their passion is working with developmental athletes rather than progressing to senior international. Have you discussed how to enhance the value of working with and staying with developmental coaches rather than feeling the need to go up to that other level of international?
I think there's a few things we definitely have. I think we need to have an image that coaching development is about broadening your knowledge and not about climbing a ladder. So that I guess it's a reset of understanding how do you develop as a coach. And the other part is recognizing that when an athlete achieves a gold medal, for example, that the pathway and developmental coaches have played a role. And as a coach who I worked a significant amount of time in the pathway, but there was one particular coach who I had passed an athlete onto over a period of time. And this coach would always say to me, you are part of that result. That's important. And I think the recognition of being part of a journey for an athlete is a key. But then the other part is actually sometimes their role is a lot harder. So we need to actually pay them appropriately.
Yeah, here. Well, thank you, Michelle and Hannah. That was amazing. And what we will be doing around developing this network is after this webinar, we're going to send out a survey to all the participants, both on this channel and on YouTube, to find out what you want from a network or alliance of women coaches. Because our plan is to grow an international network of leaders who are committed to the advancement of women in coaching globally. So we'll send you out a short survey, and hopefully you'll be able to give us your thoughts and ideas. Now, just as a reminder, before we finish off with a few bits of information there, Karen, if you could just pop it on. Those of you who have attended this webinar, we've got an amazing discount for you on the price of the book, Winning Ways of Women Coaches. You've had some little tidbits from Cecile about what's in that book. And believe me, there is an absolute wealth of wisdom in that book. So it's really worth sending off for. So take advantage of that discount. Now, I'd just like to share a couple of other events that are coming up, and I've talked about it at the beginning. I'm chair of the IWG World Conference. The IWG stands for the International Working Group, and we are just 9 weeks away from this amazing event. The IWG is the world's largest network, which is dedicated to empowering women and girls in sport and recreation. And our global family is coming together in Auckland, New Zealand, on the 14th to the 17th of November. And it's a unique event because it's a hybrid. So you can either come to Auckland in person, and I'm sure many of you have already registered, or you can join online and be a virtual participant. We have a huge range of interactive sessions with over 200 fabulous speakers and presenters. And coaching is one of the core threads throughout the conference. And John Bales, the ICCE president, is leading that stream. And it's really important that we connect to this, because as we emerge from the pandemic, it's a really exciting opportunity to reinvigorate our sector, which we know has fallen behind as a result of the COVID restrictions, and make sure we build back up to be more resilient, more inclusive, and more sustainable. So make sure you hop on the conference website, just plug in IWG conference, and check out the amazing speakers and come along and join us. So other events that are coming up, Cecile mentioned earlier that she is a past vice president of We Coach, and I know that we've got, is it Vanessa online, who's been sharing some fabulous work that's happening through We Coach as a mentor program and networking, and it's all about supporting women coaches. Now, the Breakthrough Online Summit is being held on the 16th of December. It's a one-day program, and it's a leadership summit for women in sport. So it's really important that you hop onto their website, the We Coach website, and find out all about that event. And then another coaching event that you definitely need to be at is the 14th Global Coach Conference. 14. Goodness gracious. They've been held every 2 years for as long as I can remember. And the next one is in Singapore in 2023. So registrations will be available. And again, you can hop onto the ICCE website to find out more about that. Now, before we leave, I'm just wondering if there are any other questions or comments that anybody wants to ask of the panel. Here we've got one here, Michelle, Hannah, and obviously Cecile, if you want to join in. A Women's Coach Alliance, including mentorship and sponsorship, are great initiatives. What do we think as a panel, everyone? What have been the key areas identified by the coaches that they want to develop or improve in their coaching from these support initiatives? So have we got anything specific that the coaches want to get from this alliance? Hannah, have you got, we'll turn to you as a coach. What would you want most of all? I mean, you already shared about wanting to hear similar stories so you're not alone. You're not a victim. I love that phrase. Was there anything else specific that you would expect?
No, I think that's been probably the biggest learnings from doing all the workshops and the project that Michelle is going through. It's sort of not one specific initiative that needs to change. It's actually the dialogue, and it does start in that pathways space. And I think I think in that high performance space, it is actually getting better, but it is still in the clubs to go into that pathways, to go into that middle area where the dialogue needs to change a little bit more. And I think so the conversations, having the conversations, and women being brave enough to seek out other women as well. Sometimes, yeah, as I said, you feel like you are on your own. So I think having the network of support, you know, to know that you're not on your own is probably the most important.
Absolutely. And I can see Cecile waving at me there. So I'm going to come to you straight away, Cecile. In your experience, what do you see?
Well, I think that mentorship is really just a safe place to go talk. And I found that people in a different sport, I mean, I was good friends with Pat Summitt in basketball. I could talk to her about anything and she wasn't going to use it against me, recruit against me, coach against me. So if you can get somebody outside of your area of expertise, outside of your sport, someone in business, but it's you can just, I think everybody that doesn't have a dog in the fight can give us better advice than those of us that are right in the middle of it. So just that an outside person listening that's not going to, you know, be scary to talk to. I think that's what I look at it for.
An objective view.
That's right.
Yeah. And we know from the research that women-only initiatives and programs are empowering for women to get started, to develop confidence, to share their own stories and experience. So thank you. Well, time is up. That's an hour has absolutely sped by. Well, it has for me. Hopefully everyone else has been as engaged as I have. I have to do a real sincere thanks, firstly to the International Council of Coaching Excellence, the ICCE, for hosting this webinar and giving us the opportunity to hear from these amazing speakers, Cecile, Michelle, and Hannah. Thank you for joining us as well. Thank you to Human Kinetics, who have helped put this together, and for publishing that fantastic book, The Winning Ways of Women Coaches. And thanks to you, the participants. There weren't many on this particular channel, but I know there are lots more on the YouTube platform, and we know that people are going to be listening to the recording. So all the best to everyone with all your endeavours to support women's coaches. Have a great day or night wherever you are. Thank you very much.